My sister's voice cut through the heat of my Portland bakery like a serrated knife. "You're just a baker!" she screamed, her face twisted with a rage I didn't understand yet. I stood there at 2 p.m. on a Friday, covered in second-degree burns from a caramelized sugar accident that morning, flour in my hair, buttercream under my fingernails, and I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I'd finally seen the truth I'd been too exhausted to notice for 6 years. The revelation wasn't in that moment. It was in every moment before it. Every time I'd wired money to parents who'd never said thank you. Every time I'd funded a sister's Instagram perfect life while living above my own bakery eating day-old croissants. I couldn't believe how long I'd been blind. But what happened next? When a billionaire hotel magnate walked through my door with evidence that my own father had been sabotaging my career, intercepting million-dollar opportunities to keep me small and dependent. That's when everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and self-worth shattered like sugar glass. This is the story of how I discovered that the people who feed off you will never voluntarily set you free, and how I finally stopped feeding people who were starving me. The truth they'd been hiding was shocking enough to burn their whole world down, and I was done putting out fires that weren't mine to extinguish. The flour burns on my forearms were still red and angry when my phone buzzed that Thursday afternoon. I was elbow-deep in caramelized sugar for a wedding cake order, the heat from the ovens making my tiny Portland bakery feel like the inside of a furnace. My sister's text came through like a slap. "Actually, don't come to my engagement dinner tomorrow. Marcus's family is, well, high society. It would just be awkward having you there smelling like burnt sugar." I couldn't believe what I was reading. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was about every family gathering where I'd shown up exhausted, covered in burns, my clothes dusted with cocoa powder, while they sipped champagne and pretended I didn't exist. The betrayal stung worse than any oven burn I'd ever gotten. For 6 years, I'd been the invisible workhorse behind my family's comfort. While my sister Vanessa posted her perfectly curated influencer life on Instagram, brunches, boutique shopping, self-care Sundays, I was the one wiring money to my parents every month. They called it helping out, but the truth was darker. I was their ATM, disguised as their daughter. My bakery, Lillian's Kitchen, wasn't just my dream. It was my prison. Every croissant I sold, every custom cake I designed at 3 a.m. went straight into keeping up appearances for a family that saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. The humiliation of it all was that they never even pretended to be grateful. My father would stop by the bakery sometimes, not to say he was proud, but to ask for a little extra this month. My mother would call, her voice dripping with disappointment, asking when I was going to get a real career, like Vanessa's fiancé, Marcus Reynolds, a corporate lawyer-turned-hospitality executive she'd met at a yacht club I'd probably paid her membership to. The infidelity wasn't romantic. It was familial. They'd cheated me out of respect, lied about loving me for who I was, and backstabbed me every time they cashed my checks while refusing to acknowledge my existence in public. I was good enough to fund their lifestyle, but not good enough to sit at their table. That night, I stood in my empty bakery after closing, staring at the burns on my hands. These scars told the story of my self-worth, or lack thereof. I'd sacrificed everything: relationships, sleep, my own dreams beyond survival, all to prop up people who saw me as just a baker. The phrase echoed in my mind like a curse. Just a baker. As if creating art from flour and fire was somehow beneath them. As if the dignity of hard work meant nothing compared to Vanessa's 30,000 Instagram followers and her designer handbags. I was 32 years old and finally seeing the shocking reality. I'd been funding my own invisibility. But something shifted that night as I locked the bakery door. A small crack appeared in the facade I'd built around my pain. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was karma finally whispering in my ear. But I felt something dangerous rising inside me. Clarity. The truth was, I'd become complicit in my own erasure. Every time I sent money without question, every time I accepted their dismissive comments, Every time I showed up covered in burns and left without complaint, I was teaching them that I didn't matter. That realization didn't bring peace, it brought fury. A quiet, calculated fury that would soon change everything. The next morning, I received another text, this time from my mother. Vanessa needs you to make desserts for the engagement party Saturday night. Nothing too complicated. Maybe 200 petit fours, some macarons, a chocolate sculpture centerpiece. Family discount, of course. Of course. The audacity was breathtaking. I wasn't good enough to attend Friday's family dinner as a guest, but my labor was expected, no, demanded, for free for Saturday's big social media spectacle. This wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in the language of family obligation. And in that moment, scrolling through that text with sugar-burned fingers, I knew something had to break. What I didn't know was that the breaking point would arrive sooner than I could have imagined, carried through the door by a man I'd never met. The financial truth of my life read like a horror story written in spreadsheets. Every month for 6 years, I'd transferred $3,000 to my parents' account. Sometimes more when emergencies arose, which was almost always. I did the math one sleepless night, over $200,000. Enough to buy a house, start a second location, travel the world. Instead, it had evaporated into my family's lifestyle, while I lived in a studio apartment above my bakery, eating day-old croissants for dinner. The vengeance I felt wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold and precise, the kind that comes from finally counting the cost of your own generosity. They'd stolen more than money. They'd stolen possibilities. Vanessa's career as an influencer was built entirely on my back, though she'd never admit it. Her designer clothes, my pastries paid for them. Her luxury skincare routines and wellness retreats, funded by my 4 a.m. mornings and blistering burns. She posted about manifesting abundance and choosing yourself, while I chose to pay her rent. The betrayal wasn't just that she took the money, it was that she genuinely believed she deserved it. In her mind, her beauty and charm were valuable. My skill and sacrifice were expected. I was the family workhorse, useful but never decorative, functional but never celebrated. My parents played their role perfectly too. Dad would talk about how proud he was when strangers could hear, but alone he'd mention how I should think bigger than a small bakery. Mom collected my checks while sighing about how Vanessa had really made something of herself. The psychological payback for my financial support was being treated like a disappointment. They loved what I provided but hated who I was. I couldn't believe it had taken me so long to see it. I wasn't their daughter in any meaningful sense. I was their source, their safety net, their secret shame. They'd eat my food and cash my checks, then pretend I didn't exist when their friends asked about their children. 2 days before Friday's engagement dinner, I decided to stop the monthly transfers. Not as revenge, not yet, but as an experiment. I wanted to see how long it would take for someone to notice me when I wasn't being useful. The answer came in 4 hours. 4 hours after the transfer didn't appear, my phone exploded. Texts, calls, voicemails. Is everything okay? Did you forget? Lillian, we're counting on you. Not one message asked how I was doing, whether my burns had healed, if business was slow. Just panic about money. That's when the shocking truth crystallized. I wasn't invisible because I was a baker. I was invisible because being seen would require them to acknowledge what they'd taken. I sat in my bakery that evening, surrounded by the smell of vanilla and brown butter, and felt something crack wide open inside my chest. This wasn't just about money or respect anymore. This was about the fundamental lie I'd been living, that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, they would finally see my value. But value isn't something you can earn from people determined not to see it. You either have it in their eyes, or you don't. And in my family's eyes, I was just the baker, useful in emergencies, embarrassing in public, and always, always expendable. The reclaiming of my dignity would have to start with accepting that painful truth. But before I could decide what to do next, before I could plan my exit or set my boundaries, the universe made the decision for me. Because the very next day, my family would storm into my bakery with demands that would finally, irrevocably, shatter whatever was left of my tolerance. And standing behind them, watching everything unfold with quiet intensity, would be Marcus Reynolds himself, the fiancé I'd never met, the man whose Friday dinner I'd been uninvited from, the man whose Saturday engagement party I wasn't worthy to attend. What happened next would expose not just my family's cruelty, but a conspiracy that ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. They arrived like a storm on Friday afternoon, right in the middle of my busiest hours. My mother pushed through the door first, Vanessa trailing behind in a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. My father bringing up the rear with his usual expression of vague disappointment. I was piping buttercream roses onto a birthday cake, my hands cramping from 3 hours of repetitive motion, when Mom declared, "We need to talk about the desserts for tomorrow night's party." Vanessa showed me pictures of what she wants. Not, "Hello." Not, "How are you?" Just demands. The family drama was always like this. They'd invade my space, ignore my work, and expect immediate attention. But this time felt different. This time they'd brought an audience. 3 of Vanessa's friends had tagged along, phones out, probably planning to document the cute family bakery moment for content. My sister started listing requirements. So I need 12 dozen French macarons in rose gold. Not pink, rose gold, there's a difference. And a chocolate sculpture that looks like the Seattle skyline, about 3 feet tall. Oh, and those little lemon tarts with real gold leaf, maybe 20 dozen. I set down my piping bag carefully, my burned hands trembling. "Vanessa, that's 3 days of work minimum. The party is tomorrow night." She waved her hand dismissively, her engagement ring catching the light. "Well, you're family. You'll figure it out. Besides, it's not like you're doing anything else this weekend." The casual cruelty of it shocked me into silence. My father jumped in with his corporate negotiator voice, the one he used when he wanted something for nothing. "Lillian, this is your sister's engagement party. Surely you can make this work. Family comes first." The irony wasn't lost on me. Family came first, except when it came to actually treating me like family. I tried to explain about existing orders, about the physical impossibility of what they were asking, about proper compensation for that amount of work. My mother cut me off. "Compensation? Lillian, don't be ridiculous. We've supported your little bakery venture for years. The least you can do is help out when we need you." My little bakery venture. The bakery that had supported them for 6 years. The justice of that moment was that they didn't even realize what they'd revealed. Vanessa's friends were filming now, and I could see my sister's influencer mask sliding into place. She was performing, turning this into content, and I was the prop. "You know what your problem is, Lil?" she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You take everything so personally. We're just asking for a little help. If you really cared about family, you'd want to do this." There it was. The emotional manipulation wrapped in faux victim language. The backstabbed feeling hit me fresh. These people had weaponized family love against me for years. Every boundary I tried to set was met with accusations of being selfish. Every time I asked for basic respect, I was too sensitive. The lied to, cheated, humiliated cycle was so ingrained that I almost apologized. Almost. But then my father made his fatal mistake. He walked behind my counter, my sacred workspace, and started opening my refrigerators, examining my prep work like he owned the place. "This should be simple enough to replicate," he said, picking up a delicate hazelnut dacquoise I'd spent 2 hours perfecting. "It's just baking, Lillian. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Just baking. Those words hung in the air like poison. 6 years of burns, of 3 a.m. mornings, of perfecting recipes, of building something from nothing, reduced to just baking. I felt something snap inside me, clean and final. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was desecration. They'd invaded my sanctuary, dismissed my craft, and expected me to smile through it. I opened my mouth to tell them to leave, to finally set the boundary I should have set years ago, when the bell above my door chimed. A man walked in, tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of presence that makes a room rearrange itself. He surveyed the scene with sharp, intelligent eyes. My family crowded into my workspace, me backed against my own counter, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "I'm looking for Lillian Chen," he said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "I'm Marcus Reynolds." Then everything I thought I knew about my sister's engagement, about my family, about my own worth, was about to explode in ways I couldn't have imagined. Marcus Reynolds didn't look like a regular corporate lawyer. He looked like money, power, and precision wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire month's revenue. The hospitality executive who'd transitioned from law to build one of North America's most successful hotel chains. But it was his eyes that caught me off guard. Sharp, assessing, like he was reading a contract written in the space between people. Vanessa immediately shifted into performance mode, rushing toward him with her pageant smile. "Marcus! Baby, you're early! We were just talking to my sister about the desserts for tomorrow." He held up one hand, politely but firmly cutting her off, and I watched my sister's face flicker with confusion. "Actually, I came to speak with Lillian specifically. If you could give us a moment?" The room went silent. The shocking audacity of him asking my family to leave my own bakery wasn't lost on anyone. My mother bristled immediately. "We're in the middle of a family discussion." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested he wasn't accustomed to being questioned. "Mrs. Chen, I have a business matter to discuss with your daughter. It's time-sensitive." Business matter? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd never met this man, never had any communication with him. Vanessa looked between us, her influencer mask cracking to show something uglier underneath: suspicion, possessiveness, fear. "What business could you possibly have with Lillian?" she asked, her voice climbing an octave. Marcus finally looked directly at her, and his expression was unreadable. "That's between Lillian and myself. I'll see you tonight at your parents' house for the family dinner." Not at tomorrow's engagement party. At tonight's dinner. The Friday dinner I'd been uninvited from. My family exchanged glances, clearly uncertain whether to stay or go, but Marcus's presence was like gravity. It pulled decisions from people. They filed out slowly, Vanessa throwing looks over her shoulder that promised future interrogation. The door closed, and suddenly my cramped, flour-dusted bakery felt very small with this man standing in it. He turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Miss Chen, I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but I needed to speak with you privately, and I suspected that might be difficult under normal circumstances." He wasn't wrong. The karma of my family being dismissed from my own space felt almost too perfect. "I'm not sure I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What business would we have?" Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, an actual physical folder, like something from a legal drama. 6 months ago, my company, Reynolds International Hospitality, sent a proposal to this address. We wanted to partner with Lillian's Kitchen to create a signature dessert line for our boutique hotels across North America. It was a substantial offer, a 5-year contract worth approximately $2 million, plus creative control and profit sharing. The words hit me like a freight train. $2 million. 5 years. I'd never received any proposal. The betrayal I felt in that moment was so profound. I had to grip the counter to stay upright. "I never got any proposal," I whispered. Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening. "I know. That's why I'm here. When we never heard back, I assumed you weren't interested. But something felt off, so I had my assistant do some digging. The emails were received, Miss Chen. They were opened, read, and then nothing. Someone at this address was intercepting your professional correspondence." The room tilted. Someone at this address. But the only person besides me who had access to my business email was... No, The truth was crashing over me in waves of nausea. My father. My father, who helped with paperwork when I first opened. My father, who I'd foolishly given access to my accounts because he said he wanted to mentor me. The vengeance in my heart wasn't hot anymore. It was ice cold and absolutely certain. Marcus was watching me carefully, probably reading the realization on my face. Miss Chen, Lillian, my company still wants that partnership. I came here personally because after 6 months of radio silence, I needed to understand what happened. But walking in just now and seeing... He gestured vaguely toward where my family had been. I'm starting to get a picture. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, then turned it toward me. There, in painful clarity, were our company's records. Outgoing emails with delivery confirmations and read receipts. The rejection responses with email headers showing they'd originated from a device on your father's home network. Someone's been speaking for you, Marcus said quietly. Our tracking system logs every interaction. These rejections came from the same IP address as your bakery's business registration. Your father's home office, according to public records. Then what happened next would make the shocking truth even more devastating. My hands were shaking as I looked at Marcus's phone, seeing the evidence of my own sabotage laid out in timestamps and data logs. The rejection emails were short, professional, signed with my name, but I'd never written them. We appreciate the offer, but Lillian's Kitchen is committed to remaining a local establishment. The scale of this project doesn't align with our current business model. We're pursuing other opportunities at this time. Each one a theft of possibility, a murder of dreams I'd never even known existed. The infidelity of it was worse than any romantic betrayal could be. This was my own father, systematically cutting the wings off my future while I paid for his present. I couldn't believe the depth of calculation it required, the sustained effort of deception. Who had access to this email? Marcus asked gently, though I suspected he already knew. My father, I said, my voice hollow. When I started the bakery, I was drowning in administrative work. He offered to help with correspondence, invoices, vendor communications. I gave him account access because he said he wanted to support me. The word support tasted like ash in my mouth now. Support. What he'd actually been doing was building a cage so subtle I hadn't even felt the bars closing around me. Every opportunity he intercepted, every proposal he rejected, every door he quietly closed, it all kept me dependent, desperate, sending money I couldn't afford to people who needed me exactly as unsuccessful as I was. Marcus's expression darkened with something that might have been anger. There were at least 7 major proposals over the past 3 years. Reynolds International was just the most recent. Restaurants, hotels, publishing deals for a cookbook, even a Netflix docu-series about artisan bakers in America. Someone systematically destroyed your career before it could take off. 7 opportunities. 7 different futures I'd been lied to about, cheated out of, backstabbed away from. The dignity I'd been clinging to, the pride in being a hard-working baker who supported her family, crumbled into dust. I hadn't been noble. I'd been controlled. The self-worth I'd built around my sacrifice was just another lie my father had needed me to believe. Why? I asked, though part of me already knew. Marcus leaned against my counter, his expression grave. From what I've observed in the last 10 minutes, control, financial dependence. If you became successful, truly successful, you'd stop being their source. You'd stop being manageable. The truth of it struck me like a physical blow. My father hadn't sabotaged me out of malice exactly. He'd done it out of need. They'd built their entire lifestyle on my perpetual struggle. My success was their threat. The monthly transfers, the emergencies, the constant demands for free work, it all required me to be just successful enough to generate income, but never successful enough to escape. It was the karma of my own generosity. I'd funded my own imprisonment. I thought of every time my father had discouraged me from expanding too fast, every suggestion that I was thinking too big, every comment about how I should focus on what you're good at, instead of pursuing wholesale contracts or additional locations. It hadn't been protective wisdom. It had been preemptive sabotage. He'd kept me small by convincing me that small was noble, that ambition was dangerous, that my current struggle was the natural state of entrepreneurship. The humiliation of realizing I'd believed him, that I'd internalized his limitations as my own, was almost unbearable. I'd mocked my own dreams because he taught me to. Marcus straightened. All business now. Lillian, I need to be clear about something. I'm not here just because of the proposal. I'm here because earlier this week, when Vanessa mentioned she had a sister who owned a bakery, I did research. Your work is extraordinary. The desserts you create aren't just food. They're architecture, art, precision engineering. I've eaten in Michelin-starred restaurants across the world, and your technical skill rivals pastry chefs who charge $500 a plate. He paused, letting that sink in. You're not just a baker, Lillian. You're an artist being starved by the people who should be celebrating you. And I think it's time you knew exactly how much they've been willing to sacrifice to keep you hungry. Then he told me something that would make the shocking revelation of my father's betrayal seem like just the beginning of a much darker truth. Marcus explained that Vanessa had known. Not everything, perhaps, but enough. She'd seen emails on our father's computer, heard conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. The betrayal multiplied, fractal, each revelation spawning new wounds. My sister, who'd borrowed money for her ring, her dress, her Instagram perfect lifestyle, had known I was being sabotaged and said nothing. In fact, she'd helped. When a food blogger reached out to me directly through Instagram 2 years ago, Vanessa had convinced me the offer was a scam, that people like that just want to exploit you. The offer had been legitimate. The blogger now had 5 million followers and a best-selling cookbook. The vengeance rising in me was no longer ice, it was fire, controlled but absolute. Marcus suggested we confront my family together that evening at the family dinner, the Friday dinner I'd been uninvited from. I agreed without hesitation. What did I have to lose? My family's respect? I'd never had it. Their love? It had always been conditional on my usefulness. Walking into my parents' house that night, with Marcus Reynolds beside me, felt like bringing a lawyer to a rigged trial. My mother answered the door, her face cycling through confusion, annoyance, and forced politeness. Lillian, what are you... Marcus said you weren't coming. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Plans changed. We have some things to discuss as a family. The shocking awkwardness of the moment was delicious. Vanessa was in the living room, surrounded by gift boxes and champagne flutes, holding court with my parents like a princess in her castle. A castle built on my money, I realized with bitter clarity. She saw us and went pale. What is she doing here? Not, what are you doing here? She. Like I wasn't a person, just a problem to solve. Marcus guided me to sit down with a hand on my back, a small gesture of solidarity that nearly broke my composure. Your sister is here because we need to discuss why Lillian never received any of the business proposals sent to her over the past 3 years, Marcus said calmly, including a $2 million contract from my company. The room went nuclear. My father stood up, his face already rearranging into his defensive-aggressive mask. I don't know what you're talking about. Lillian handles her own business affairs. Dad, stop. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. I gave you access to my email. Marcus's team has records showing the emails were opened and rejected from your home network. The email headers prove it. It's over. I know what you did. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something crack in my father's expression. Not guilt exactly, but the recognition that he'd been caught. Then, predictably, he went on the offensive. I was protecting you. Those deals would have destroyed you. You're not ready for that kind of pressure, that kind of exposure. The lead to, cheated rationalization was so familiar it almost worked. But Vanessa made the fatal mistake of speaking. Oh my God, can we not do this now? This is my engagement weekend. Lillian, you're always so dramatic, always making everything about you. Something in me snapped clean. Making everything about me? Vanessa, I've paid your rent for 3 years. I've funded your lifestyle, your career, your entire existence. I wasn't even allowed to come to tonight's dinner until Marcus showed up, and now you want to talk about who makes things about themselves? Her face twisted with something ugly. The mocked becomes the mocker. The victim becomes the villain. That's because you're embarrassing. You smell like sugar and burnt butter. You have burns all over your arms. You're just a baker. She screamed it, her voice cracking with rage and something that looked like years of buried envy. The room went absolutely silent. My mother gasped. My father's face went red. But Marcus just looked at Vanessa with an expression of such cold disappointment that I watched my sister wilt in real time. Just a baker, he repeated quietly. Vanessa, I've spent 6 months trying to partner with your sister because her skill is extraordinary. I've built my career on recognizing talent, quality, excellence, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that Lillian has more value in one burned fingertip than you've generated in your entire influencer career. The payback wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the man my sister thought she'd won. Then Marcus looked at me and said something that would change everything. Lillian, I came here tonight to offer you that contract again. But now I'm offering you something more. A choice. Marcus's choice was simple. Stay in Portland, take the contract as originally offered, and continue existing in my family's orbit, or go nuclear. Option 2 was Tokyo. He had a flagship hotel opening there in 3 months and needed a partner to create an entirely new concept. A bakery that wasn't just a restaurant amenity, but a destination. Full creative control, profit sharing, housing included, and most importantly, 5,000 miles of ocean between me and the people who'd kept me small. The reclaiming of my dignity wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about choosing a life where I couldn't be diminished. I looked at my sister's furious face, my father's defensive posture, my mother's calculating silence. Tokyo, I said. I choose Tokyo. Vanessa exploded. You can't just leave. What about Mom and Dad? What about my monthly payments? I finished coldly. Those stopped 3 days ago. What about them, Vanessa? What about the fact that you knew Dad was sabotaging me and said nothing? What about the fact that you think so little of me? You screamed that I'm just a baker in front of the man you want to marry. Marcus interjected smoothly. About that. Vanessa, I need to be clear. This engagement is over. I can't marry someone who treats family with such cruelty, who enables parental sabotage, and who values social media appearances over actual character. You'll have the ring back by tomorrow. The karma of that moment was so perfect it almost hurt to witness. My sister's carefully curated life crumbled in real time. She started crying, not sad tears, but angry, desperate ones. You can't do this! We're supposed to get married in 3 months. I've already posted about it. My followers. Your followers, Marcus said quietly. We'll forget about this in 2 weeks. But you'll have to live with who you revealed yourself to be tonight. My mother tried to salvage something, turning on me with accusations. I was ungrateful, cruel, tearing the family apart over misunderstandings. But her words slid off me like water. The vengeance I'd imagined, screaming, proving my worth, making them apologize, turned out to be unnecessary. Truth was its own weapon, and silence was my shield. I stood up, my burned hands surprisingly steady. I'm leaving now. I'll have the bakery packed up and sold within a month. Marcus's lawyers will handle the contract details. Don't contact me again. My father made one last attempt, his voice breaking slightly. Lillian, you can't just walk away from family. We raised you. You raised an ATM, I said softly. And you maintained me just carefully enough that I'd keep generating withdrawals. But I'm not a machine, Dad. I'm your daughter. Or I was. The betrayal in his eyes wasn't about losing me as a person. It was about losing me as a resource. That distinction was everything. The shocking moment of clarity was realizing I felt nothing but relief. Walking out of that house with Marcus felt like emerging from underwater. My lungs expanded, my vision cleared. The weight of 6 years of financial and emotional servitude lifted all at once, and I almost stumbled from the sudden lightness. Vanessa called after me, her voice ragged. "You're going to regret this. You'll come crawling back when your little Tokyo adventure fails." I didn't turn around. Marcus opened the car door for me, and as I slid into the seat, I heard my mother say something about always knew she was selfish. But their voices were already fading, becoming background noise, becoming nothing. The justice I'd sought wasn't punishment. It was liberation. That night, I blocked every number, changed my email passwords, removed my father's access to everything. I sat in my apartment above the bakery, my soon-to-be former bakery, and felt the humiliation of the past 6 years transform into something else. Rage, yes, but also determination. They'd kept me small because small meant controllable. But I wasn't small. I'd never been small. I'd been compressed, crushed, diminished by people who needed me to believe I was less than I was. Marcus texted me a single sentence. "The only thing standing between you and the life you deserve is the decision to walk toward it." I was walking. No, I was running. And I was never, ever looking back. Then the real consequences of my choice would begin to unfold in ways even I couldn't have predicted. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within a week, Vanessa's Instagram was hemorrhaging followers. Someone, probably one of her friends who'd been filming at my bakery, leaked the video of her screaming, "You're just a baker." The clip spread from a local Portland foodie account, then got picked up by bigger commentary pages, and the internet's judgment was swift. Comment sections filled with accusations. Imagine calling your own sister just a baker while she literally funded your life. This is why influencers get a bad reputation. Pure narcissism. Her sponsorship deals evaporated. Brands don't want to associate with people who display that level of cruelty, especially when it's caught on video. The karma wasn't subtle. It was a demolition. Within 30 days, she'd lost 60,000 followers and 3 major partnerships. Her perfectly curated empire crumbled faster than anyone expected. My parents' situation was worse. Without my monthly payments, the facade of their comfortable retirement cracked immediately. The country club membership lapsed. The luxury car lease couldn't be renewed. My mother called once. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail that oscillated between rage and pleading. "You're destroying this family over your pride. Your father was trying to protect you. We gave you everything." The lied-to narrative was so ingrained she actually believed it. The truth was simpler and more devastating. They'd given me nothing but expectations, taken everything including my future, and now they were facing the shocking reality of living within their actual means. Dad reportedly tried to get a consulting job but discovered that at 63, with no recent work history, the market wasn't kind. Vanessa attempted a comeback 6 weeks after the breakup. She posted a tearful apology video titled, "I was wrong, taking accountability." It was a masterclass in performative remorse. Lots of talking about growth and learning without actually taking responsibility. She never mentioned me by name, never acknowledged the financial exploitation, never addressed the sabotage. The comments section destroyed her. "This isn't accountability, this is damage control. Where's the apology to your sister? You can't grow your way out of cruelty." The payback wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the same audience she'd tried to build her life on. They saw through the betrayal, recognized the backstabbed victim in the story, and they weren't forgiving. Marcus, true to his word, had his legal team handle everything. The sale of my Portland bakery went smoothly. A young couple bought it, promising to keep the name and honor the recipes. My equipment, my lease, my supplier relationships, all transferred cleanly. My father tried to block the sale, claiming some kind of family interest in the business, but Marcus's lawyers demolished that argument in 48 hours. The vengeance of watching my father's attempted control backfire completely was almost too perfect. He'd spent years keeping me dependent, and now he had zero leverage, zero access, zero power. The inversion was complete. Everything he'd tried to prevent, my independence, my success, my escape, was happening with a finality he couldn't stop. The last piece of fallout came from an unexpected source. Extended family and family friends started reaching out to me. Cousins who'd watched me be dismissed at every gathering. My late grandmother's best friend who'd always thought I was undervalued. Even some of my parents' neighbors who'd noticed the dynamic. The messages were all variations of the same theme. We saw what they did to you. We're glad you got out. The shocking revelation wasn't that my family had been cruel. It was that other people had seen it all along and said nothing. The complicity of silence had enabled my imprisonment. But now that I'd broken free, suddenly everyone wanted to be on the right side of history. I didn't respond to most of them. Their validation came too late to matter. By the time I boarded the plane to Tokyo, 3 months after that confrontation, the devastation in Portland was complete. Vanessa had moved back in with our parents, her influencer career essentially over. My parents had downsized to a small condo, their comfortable retirement replaced by careful budgeting and resentment. My father, I heard, told people I'd abandoned them, that I was heartless and ungrateful. Let him tell that story. I was 8,000 miles away, about to step into a life I'd built from dignity, self-worth, and the reclaiming of everything they'd tried to take from me. The truth was, they hadn't lost a daughter, they'd lost a source. And sources, I'd learned, are a lot easier to mourn than people. Then my real life, the one I'd been sabotaged from living, would finally begin. Tokyo embraced me in ways Portland never could. The Reynolds flagship hotel was in Shibuya, all glass and steel and sophisticated minimalism. And my bakery, our bakery, occupied the entire ground floor corner with windows that let people watch me work. Lillian's atelier became a destination within 3 months. Japanese customers appreciated precision, artistry, the reverence for craft that I'd always felt but my family had mocked. Here, being a baker wasn't shameful. It was respected, honored, celebrated. The karma of finding validation 8,000 miles from the people who'd denied it to me felt like the universe correcting a cosmic error. I was finally in a place where my value was obvious, not negotiable. Marcus turned out to be more than a business partner. He became the family I'd chosen. Not romantic, despite what my parents probably assumed, but something deeper. Mutual respect between two people who understood the language of building something meaningful. He taught me about hospitality, about scaling without losing quality, about negotiating with suppliers and investors. I taught him about patience, about the meditation of repetitive tasks, about how sugar and heat and time could create transformation. We built something together that neither of us could have built alone. The justice in that collaborative success was that it proved my family's fundamental lie. I didn't need to be controlled to be successful. I needed to be freed. The bakery's success exceeded every projection. Within a year, we'd opened 2 more locations in Tokyo, then one in Kyoto, then Singapore, then Seoul. The Netflix docuseries that had been rejected by my father's Sabotage contacted me again, this time through my own channels, not intercepted by anyone. Rise, the Lillian Chen story, premiered to massive audiences and critical acclaim. The irony wasn't lost on me. The documentary about artisan bakers that would have featured my struggle in Portland, instead, showcased my triumph in Tokyo. The shocking transformation of my life became content that inspired millions, and the revenge was that my family had to watch it happen from their small condo, knowing they'd almost prevented it. I built a new family in Tokyo. Marcus, yes, but also my team, my suppliers, my regular customers who'd line up at 5 a.m. for my croissants. I dated a Kyoto-based architect who treated me like I was extraordinary, not embarrassing. I made friends who valued my time, my talent, my perspective. Nobody here knew me as the family ATM, the invisible daughter, the girl covered in burns who wasn't good enough for her own sister's party. They knew me as Lillian Chen, the pastry chef whose hazelnut dacquoise had been featured in Bon Appetit, whose chocolate work had been praised by renowned French chefs. The reclaiming of my identity wasn't about proving anything to my old family. It was about discovering who I'd always been beneath their diminishment. Sometimes, late at night after closing, I'd stand in my beautiful bakery and think about the moment Vanessa screamed, "You're just a baker," with such contempt. She'd meant it as an insult, but she'd accidentally revealed a truth. I was a baker. Not just anything, I was fully, completely, magnificently a baker. And being a baker was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The dignity I'd been searching for in their approval had always been in my work, in my craft, in my burned hands and 3 a.m. mornings. My self-worth wasn't something they could grant or withhold. It was something I'd built, one perfect pastry at a time, whether they saw it or not. 2 years after leaving Portland, I finally unblocked Vanessa's number, not to reconnect, but to send a single message. A photo of my Tokyo bakery at sunrise, customers wrapped around the block, golden light hitting the windows just right. I didn't include commentary. I didn't need to. The image said everything. This is what you tried to keep me from. This is the life your cruelty nearly cost me. This is what I became when you stopped crushing me. She never responded, but she didn't need to. That message wasn't about getting a response. It was about closing a door so completely that even the memory of it being open would fade. Then I deleted her number again, permanently this time, and went back to work. Because some people deserve vengeance, but the best ones simply deserve to be forgotten. The real revelation came on a quiet Tuesday morning in my 3rd year in Tokyo. I was teaching a pastry class, something I did monthly now, sharing my techniques with young chefs, when a student asked, "Chef Chen, how did you know you were ready to leave everything behind and start over?" The question hit differently than she'd probably intended. The truth was, I didn't know. I wasn't ready. Nobody's ever ready to walk away from family, to burn bridges, to choose themselves over people who've convinced them that selflessness equals love. But readiness is a trap. It's what keeps you frozen, waiting for permission that will never come. The shocking truth I'd learned was that you don't wait to be ready. You just decide you're done being small. I told my students about Portland, about family betrayal, about the moment Vanessa screamed that I was just a baker while I stood covered in burns. I told them about the emails my father intercepted, about the dreams he murdered to keep me dependent, about the karma of watching them collapse when I removed my support. But mostly I told them this: the people who benefit from your smallness will never give you permission to grow. They'll call it betrayal when you choose yourself. They'll call it selfish when you stop sacrificing. They'll call it cruel when you set boundaries. Let them. Their opinion of your liberation doesn't matter. It's not even about you. It's about their fear of losing what you provide. You're not abandoning family. You're abandoning exploitation disguised as family. One student, barely 22, raised her hand. But what if you're wrong? What if they really do love you and you're just being dramatic? I understood that question. I'd asked it myself 1,000 times. Then they'll love you enough to let you go, to celebrate your success, to respect your boundaries without punishing you for having them. Real love wants you to thrive, even if it means thriving somewhere else. Conditional love wants you to stay small enough to remain useful. The difference becomes very clear when you try to grow. The dignity in that answer wasn't theoretical. It was earned through years of burns, both physical and emotional, through the humiliation of being a resource instead of a daughter, through the payback of finally choosing myself. My students left that day with more than pastry techniques. They left with permission. Permission to be ambitious without apologizing. Permission to set boundaries without guilt. Permission to walk away from people who only love what you provide, not who you are. The justice I'd sought wasn't about my family suffering, though they did, and I won't pretend I didn't notice. The justice was in the proof. I could survive without them. I could thrive without them. I could build an entire empire of respect, success, and genuine love without a single person who'd convinced me I was unworthy. That proof was everything. It was the truth that set me free. Looking back now from my beautiful life in Tokyo, I don't regret the years I spent funding my family's comfort. Those years taught me resilience, taught me the value of hard work, taught me exactly who I was when everything else was stripped away. What I regret is believing their story about me longer than I should have. I regret the infidelity to myself, the way I cheated my own dreams, lied about my own worth, backstabbed my own potential because they'd convinced me that's what family required. The vengeance I enacted wasn't against them. It was against the version of me who'd accepted their narrative. And that version died the moment I boarded that plane. What rose from her ashes was someone they'd never seen. The woman I'd always been, finally free to exist. The last thing I'll say is this. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you're the one who sustains everyone while being valued by no one, if you're the burned baker covered in scars while your family drinks champagne and uninvites you from their celebrations, you're not dramatic. You're not ungrateful. You're not cruel for wanting more. You're not wrong for choosing yourself. The people who built their comfort on your suffering will call your liberation every ugly name they can think of. Let them. Their words lose power the moment you stop listening. And someday, years from now, you'll stand in the life you built from your own dignity, surrounded by people who chose you back, and you'll realize something. Shocking. You were never the problem. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe you were. Now go prove them wrong. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Who in your life have you been making yourself smaller for? Who's been drinking champagne on your exhaustion and calling it love? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? Did they call you selfish for it? Did they try to make you feel guilty for choosing dignity over dysfunction? I want to hear about it, because these stories matter. Your vengeance, your justice, your moment of saying enough, it all matters. And if you're still in it, still covered in burns while someone else celebrates, still funding someone else's dreams while yours collect dust, comment anyway. Sometimes just saying it out loud is the first step toward the door. Here's what I know for certain. The people who benefit from your sacrifice will call your boundaries betrayal. They'll rewrite history, paint themselves as victims, tell anyone who will listen that you're the cruel one for stopping the flow of everything you gave. Let them. Their story about you isn't yours to carry anymore. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Karma doesn't need your help, just your absence. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about real people who chose themselves over people who chose to use them. Turn on notifications, because I'm going to keep bringing you these narratives about family drama, betrayal, and the reclaiming of self-worth that nobody wants to talk about, but everyone needs to hear. And remember this, you don't owe anyone your smallness. Not your parents, not your siblings, not anyone who convinced you that being useful meant being loved. The moment you stop sustaining people who've been draining you, they'll reveal exactly who they are. And you'll finally see exactly who you've always been without their weight crushing you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't revenge, isn't payback, isn't proving them wrong. Sometimes it's just walking away, building something beautiful, and never looking back. That's not cruelty. That's liberation. Now go turn off the lights on anyone who's been living in your glow without ever seeing your value. The stars are waiting.